and welcome to another edition of Chiodini's Kitchen video game recipes made real. This week's recipe is our most requested, which is kind of cool. We're getting requests. But incidentally, I've actually wanted to make this particular foodstuff for well over a decade now. This week, we're doing Yeto's superb soup from the Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess. So, in case you need a quick recap, there's this one section in The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess in which you have to help this giant abominable snowman, Yeto, make soup for his wife, Yeta, who is sick. And when I say help make soup, what I mean is go off to different parts of his massive house and find different ingredients. And each time you bring him an ingredient, he'll shove you over and snatch it for himself and put it in the pot. So you're less sort of like sous chef, more errand boy. Anyway, for this recipe you'll need some onion, a few cloves of garlic, you'll need a quantity of pumpkin or butternut squash if you can't find pumpkin. I couldn't find pumpkin, so we're using butternut squash. You'll need some smoked mackerel, some goat's cheese, some vegetable stock, and some fresh basil, and some salt and pepper. I think that's everything. Normally I write these recipes down, but this week I forgot. Right, so step one is to preheat the oven, because what we're going to do is take the butternut squash, or pumpkin, cut it up into small cubes after peeling it, then we're going to rub that with some oil and salt and bake it in the oven so it becomes really flavoursome before you even start making the soup properly. Do not miss this step, it's vitally important. Before I get going actually, can I just say how disappointingly small this butternut squash is? I paid £1 for that. Do make sure to scoop all this stuff out, by the way. It's not especially tasty. You can save the seeds and roast them up to make a savoury snack, but that's a different recipe for another day. Alright, so that's going to sit in the oven for about 40 minutes, give or take, so chill out, intermittently turn into a wolf if that's your thing, and then a few minutes before it's due to come out the oven, you can start cutting your onions and garlic and make the vegetable stock. In sharp contrast to our butternut squash, which was ridiculously small, this onion is alarmingly large, so I'm going to use about half of it. So it occurs to me I never actually qualified why I've wanted to make this recipe for more than a decade. I had just started university when Twilight Princess came out, and I spent a lot of time that winter ignoring my studies and just playing this amazing Zelda game instead. And I remember playing through this segment really clearly and just thinking, I really want to make that soup, and I keep meaning to do it. I don't know why. Like, 10 years is a long time to put something off. But yeah, I just never got round to it, basically. Anyway, so the butternut squash is very nearly ready to come out the oven, so what I'm going to do is start sweating the onions and garlic in a pan with some more oil. So, oh dear, steamy. Here is our butternut squash. Frankly, I would have liked to give this a bit longer in the oven in order to really sort of get the outsides looking nice, but it'll have to do because I'm quite pushed for time. Now we're going to add that to our pan of onions, and then we're going to add the stock to that pan also. don't forget to add pepper. Right, so we're bringing our soup up to the boil now, and once that's done I'm going to let this stew for a few minutes, and then what I'm going to do with this spoon is take some of the butternut squash and kind of mash it against the side of the pan to break it up a bit so that the soup will start to thicken. And the reason for that is, ordinarily I would use a hand blender, but I can't find mine, so it's just going to be a chunky kind of bumpy lumpy soup, which is fine to be fair. If you look at the actual thing in the game, there are lots of chunks in it, so that's my reasoning and I'm going to stick with it. Now before we advance to the next step, I need to have a very brief word with you about reek fish, because reek fish is the fish used in the recipe in The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, but the only problem is that fish doesn't actually exist in the real world, which I think you'll agree is something of a limitation. Nonetheless, I mean it looks a lot like a salmon, but the name also suggests reeking, which is a smelly fish, so I thought meaty, stinky fish, let's go with some smoked mackerel. You could just as easily use salmon or smoked salmon if you wanted to. I just really like smoked mackerel. And with that, our next step is to flake in some smoked mackerel. Do make sure, however, to remove the skin. Alright, so we've got our mackerel in our soup, we've just turned the heat back up under it. I hope you'll agree it's thickening quite nicely, it's no longer sort of a thin broth with chunks in it. I'm going to leave this to sit for a few minutes so the flavours kind of combine and incorporate with one another, and then we're going to start adding some of this, which is goat's cheese. We're going to start adding it in quite gradually, I think, because it's kind of quite a strong, sharp tasting cheese, and I'm kind of winging this recipe, so I don't know how much to add. So we're going to do it bit by bit until it tastes delicious, then we're going to simmer it down. Although of course this is cheese we're talking about, so it should go without saying that there is a massive temptation to just throw the whole thing in anyway. I'm not sure if you can see this, but I am rather inexpertly trying to separate the cheese from the rind, and I'm almost certainly getting a few bits in there, but if you do that, do not worry too much. They will float to the surface and you'll be able to pick them out. More cheese. That'll do. And for those of you following along at home with your own ingredients, this was a 150 gram pack of goat's cheese, and as you can see, I've used most of it. And that's pretty much it, to be honest. Everything's in the pan. We've just got to leave it on the stove until it reaches the desired consistency, ladle it into a bowl, and feed it to someone else's sick wife. Right, so here is Yeto's superb soup. There's just one final step, which is to take a couple of leaves of fresh basil, and that is hard to do one-handed. Cut it up nice and small, and then throw that in the soup. Now it is time for the obligatory taste test, so here we go, superb soup. What's it like? Scalding hot is what it's like. Hold on. Ah! We'll do another take. Okay. Zingy. Well, it's kind of interesting. I don't normally use basil very much in things because I feel like it's a very potent, very pungent herb. But that's actually, it kind of gives a lift to the sort of like earthiness of the goat's cheese and the kind of just meaty, smoky flavour of the mackerel. That all works together really surprisingly well. That is a superb soup. If I could do one thing different, I'd probably use a little less oil on the potato, and maybe I'd dry fry the onions or something, just because mackerel's quite an oily fish anyway. So the whole thing, it feels a little bit oily in the mouth. But other than that, that is pretty delicious. So anyway, thank you very much for tuning into this edition of Chiodini's Kitchen. Please do keep those suggestions for future recipes coming in because, again, I'm having a lot of fun making these and it's nice to know that there are things you want to see made real. I already know what the next one's going to be. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a bit weird. So tune in for that, and if you'd like to see some other videos from Eurogamer, you should feel free. They're all on the screen now. Either way, no pressure. Thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.